It's certainly been a while since I've last reviewed gaming peripherals, especially a gaming keyboard. As a matter of fact, it's been like 2 years now. Anyway, today I'm taking a look at remarkable peripherals at pretty impressive, attractive pricing by the manufacturer, ADATA, and its gaming brand XPG. In fact, I'll not only focus on a single product today, instead I'll fly over a total of 3 today. The highlight, of course, is the ADATA XPG Summoner mechanical keyboard equipped with Cherry Max Speed silver switches. This board is coming in at roughly $90 to $100 currently. Next up is the XPG Primer gaming mouse, which can be had for about $35 to $40 if I'm not mistaken. Right away, let me tell you, this mouse ain't perfect, but it does come with its strengths. Last but not least, the foundation of a proper RGB gaming setup, a mousepad or mousemat, whichever you prefer. This one goes by the name of XPG Battleground XL Prime. You can currently get it for about $35 to $40. Again, that's if I'm not mistaken. And yes, I am fully aware of the fact that each and every one of us has their own opinion on such RGB mousepads. I myself, admittedly, am not necessarily the biggest fan of such. I find them a little pointless, but everything and everyone deserves a chance. I would consider myself pretty open-minded. So let's take a look at these goodies and see where their strengths and weaknesses lie. Let's go. In terms of what comes included, all 3 products come with fairly simple accessories, as expected. Noteworthy, though, is that at a price starting at $90 for the Summoner keyboard, we are getting a large, magnetic and padded wrist rest. Even with certain super pricey boards out there, we often get to see plastic only, if not invisible air. Besides the usual paper documentation and stickers, there also are a total of 9 red keycaps included, along with a keycap puller. The Primer mouse, on the other hand, only comes with paper documentation and stickers, and same goes for the mousepad, well, except for the fact we are also getting a detachable micro USB cable with that one. Now I'd say let's get started with the best of the bunch, the keyboard. The XPG Summoner is kept fairly simple and minimalistic, does however come with all the needed features you'd come to expect from a good keyboard. This also includes a dedicated mute multimedia key in the upper right hand corner, along with an aluminum control wheel acting as volume control. Additional gimmicks or bells and whistles, such as dedicated macro keys or anything like that, are nowhere to be found on here. This also keeps the dimensions of the keyboard fairly down to earth, compact if you will, given the fact we do have a numpad on here. What I did notice right away though is that despite those keyboard stands put up, this model sits lower than most other gaming keyboards I've dealt with so far. Initially, it felt a bit weird to me, but I got used to it fairly quickly as it turns out. Noteworthy as well as praiseworthy is the sleek yet well-built aluminum top plate. Sometimes less is more, and that certainly applies to this keyboard by ADATA. Very well done indeed. The biggest praise they deserve, however, for the wrist rest at this attractive price point. It's well padded, not too slim, comes with good height, and makes use of strong magnets to keep it attached to the keyboard. When typing for hours on end, that sure is a blessing if you're asking me. Honestly, I couldn't even live without a proper wrist rest anymore. Ergonomics are not neglected here. Typing is a lot of fun with this model, and I'm sure this would also apply to the gaming experience. Unfortunately, I no longer have any time for gaming sessions. This Summoner not only can be picked up with Cherry Max Speed silver switches, as in my case today, but you could also grab it with traditional MX red or blue switches. Other than that, there aren't really a whole lot of differences compared to those renowned legends out there, which is a good thing. What makes these Cherry Max Speed silver switches rather special is that, as the name Speed already suggests, their actuation point is lower, whereas MX red switches feature 45 grams along with an actuation point of 1.9mm. Already considered fast, MX Speed Silver takes it to the next level with 45 grams and 1.2mm. That may not sound like a lot, but passionate gamers as well as typers should be able to feel a difference in speed. I, for my part, certainly am impressed by these switches. A nice bonus is the stated long lifespan of over 100 million keystrokes. Now, this keyboard does not connect with just a single, but two USB plugs, one of which is reserved for the USB pass-through. Everything's nicely braided, of course, which applies to all of today's ADATA XPG devices. Should you for some reason need to switch into the legacy mode, with a simple key combination, you can easily switch into the 6-key rollover. Simple LED controls as well as macro recording can be done on keyboard, but let's be honest there, it's much easier and more convenient getting that done with intuitive software, and we do happen to get such here. The XPG Prime tool offers us plenty of customization, profiles, a bunch of RGB settings and LED effects to choose from, and even each and every individual key, except for the dedicated multimedia key plus wheel, can be reprogrammed with macros, for instance. The noise levels of the XPG Summoner I find to be perfectly okay. This is how typing sounds like with MX Speed silver switches. Now let's take a look at that XPG Primer gaming mouse. This one doesn't manage to impress me as much as the Summoner keyboard does. Other than that one, there were some compromises made with the Primer. Compromises that might hurt some of us. The lower price of $35 to $40 certainly does start to show. Nonetheless, it's a mouse with fairly respectable build quality, although I couldn't help but notice some minor cosmetic flaws on my specific sample. The grip I personally find to be good and comfy. The whole surface is out of double-shot PBT, therefore the surface remains rather smooth without ending up being slippery. On the left and right, there are good rubberized as well as textured grips. The mouse base or frame, if you will, interestingly is all red. On the bottom we find 4 Teflon feet, allowing the mouse to smoothly glide across surfaces, especially when going with good fabric mouse pads. I probably should point out the weight of 98 grams. This is neither exceptionally lightweight nor heavy. It's somewhere in between. One could say it's perfectly balanced. A good compromise even I myself can live with, and I did turn into a fan of lightweight mice by now. Needless to say, we're dealing with an optical sensor. ADATA has gone with a trusty, legendary PixArt PMW3360 sensor, allowing for up to 12,000 dpi here. Although I need to point out to you guys, we can only choose and switch between the DPI in levels. While I turned out to be happy with those 1600 DPI offered, even at a screen resolution of 4K UHD, some people will certainly feel a bit limited. Many mice of the competition, after all, tend to offer user customizable DPI levels and numbers. Well, with the help of software, that is. And software we do not get any with the XPG Primer. We are on our own with this rodent. But then again, it needs to be said, today's ADATA XPG mouse at $35 to $40 does cost less than mice of the competition while offering fairly comparable build quality. So some sacrifices, such as lack of software, kinda need to be expected. Profiles we therefore don't get any on here either. Luckily, costs weren't saved on these switches. We get ones by Omron. Beside the DPI button, there's also the RGB button, with which we can choose from a few static colors, along with 2 different RGB LED effects. So all in all, a pretty decent yet simple mouse with a few limitations. No weight adjustment system, no software control, no dedicated additional buttons or switches to modify any kind of performance, such as polling rate for instance. But other than that, 1600 DPI personally served me well, and I would still consider it a strong candidate in the flooded world of gaming mice. But what does it sound like, you ask? Like that. And this leads to the carpet, or rather, mousepad, going by the name of XPG Battleground XL Prime. Obviously, that XL in the branding is no lie. The dimensions of it are 900mm length, 420mm width, and 4mm height. The highlight here certainly being the so-called Cordura or Cordura fabric. The material doesn't really ring any bells for me, but then again, I'm not knowledgeable when it comes to fabrics. Still, it's a fairly smooth surface, and it should also not only be scratch, but also splash-proof. So we're definitely talking of something more durable than your cheap, standard supermarket wannabe mousepad. As I've mentioned earlier before with the mouse, this mousepad does really allow for some good, smooth gliding and exact movement. In fact, not something we should always take for granted, and you know that if you've dealt with quite a few quality tiers in the past. Rather standard and common is the rubberized base surface. It's very important though, as it keeps the mousepad from slipping. It doesn't go anywhere. I'm sure we've all made the experience of mousepads slipping away, luckily not happening with this one. Now, a rather controversial topic is the RGB aspect of mousepads in general. I wouldn't really consider myself an advocate of RGB mousepads, but I don't hate them by any means. I simply find them a bit pointless, that's all. Nonetheless, the lighting is well done on here. The edges light up nicely in beautiful colors, even though color and effect diversity is limited to say the least. But that's what you have to deal with most RGB mousepads out there. A few extra bonus points this model manages to harvest for offering 2-zone lighting, individual lighting zones. If you suddenly decide to hate RGB after having purchased this thing, no worries, thanks to the detachable micro USB cable, you can just leave it all unplugged. But of course, you could also simply turn it off or switch effects and colors at the tip of a button press on this little controller in the upper left corner of the mouse carpet. To sum things up, I'm very impressed by today's 3 peripheral products in terms of price to performance ratio. What impressed me most is the Summoner keyboard, but even the Primer mouse, as well as the Battleground XL Prime mousepad turn out to be very decent products. I personally find it great that for a change, we now get to see good products by renowned brands at normal, fairly decent pricing in fact. I can definitely recommend picking up today's 3 products. Pretty good stuff indeed. With that being said, take care everyone, and see you in the next one.